Okay, we're going to set up some suns so we can set out the sun angles for our site analysis plans. First thing we need to do is just get our heads around how to make these little filled region suns here. What I'm going to sort of look at is that if we change this site analysis from 1 to 200, and before I change it I just want to measure and see what size that sun is. Around about 15 millimeters across, and I think if I brought it back to about 10 millimeters across when it's printed out, it's probably a good size on a complex site analysis that leaves us enough space to work with it, not too big and dominant on our sheets. This is just a filled region, and I've put the north arrow in so we can just do a little comparison here, because when we change the scale of this drawing, you'll note the north arrow stays the same size, whereas the filled region has doubled in size. And if I go for 1 to 500, you'll see that the sun has reduced in size. So filled regions are not subject to the different scaling effects. The north arrow is, because it's an annotation symbol. So there's our tip. We need to make our sun out of an annotation symbol. So let's look at how to do that. Before we can start, we need to set up a drafting view. The drafting view that we're going to set up in this project is one that we're going to actually export so that we can just bring it into our next project and reuse our sun angles. So from the View tab, we'll go to Drafting View, and we're going to name this drafting view a climatic data, because I'm actually going to put in other information. We're going to have the sun angles in there, but I will also put the wind direction. We can add other things as we need to build it up, and I'll make it a 1 to 200 at this stage to match the site analysis. So from the File menu, we'll go New, and down the bottom here there's an annotation symbol option. So we're not creating a family or a project, we're actually creating an annotation symbol. That'll take us straight to this menu, which is the annotations, and the one we'll use is just a metric generic annotation. That'll open up to this in your drawing area with a little note saying that we can change the category type back up into here if we want to later on. It's a good way how we can make electrical items and things like that. You can make them here and then redirect them as to what category you want them in. The insertion point is the intersecting of these two planes. So before we go any further, first of all we need to save the file. So save as family, locate your preferred location where you're going to save this, and I'll just call it the sun image. And we can now start to draw our little sun image. Now in this plan it's a little bit sort of random. We're drawing this at 1 to 1. When you create an annotation category, 1 millimeter is 1 millimeter. So when you bring it in at 1 to 100, it's going to be 100 times bigger. So I'm going to make this a little filled region about 10 millimeters across. So when it comes in at a meter at 1 to 100, which will measure 10 millimeters on our page. That'll make sense, yes? So first of all, I'm just going to draw a couple of lines, and I'll go offset of 5, and I'll draw straight up and down so that I can get a gauge of what 10 millimeters on my screen will look like. About that size. Next thing I need is a pattern for my sun, and I've just gone on the web and found an image that I can drag and drop in. And I'll set it up so that it's roughly our size that we are after. And I'm just going to set it above the crosshairs, so the insertion point will be just below that sun when I bring it in. And it's a bit complex, this image. Just remember these are very small when they're on your site analysis, and we don't need to put too much detail into it. So let's create a filled region, and I'm going to make the filled region solid fill black, so I'm going to change that to yellow for the sun. When you're doing this, remember that this yellow sun may end up on a white background, so just maybe give it a little bit of strength in the colour, just so that it will stand out when it's on a black as well as a white background. And I'll go with invisible lines, so you just see the fill pattern without the black line around it. And then we can start to draw. Best way to do that is using the arc, and I'll just grab a circle first, and we're going to start on our line. I'll just go with thin lines so that we don't see the thickness of the line like that. Then we can do our arcs, and you can just do a series of different arcs around, all the way around to indicate the sun. Fortunately for you, I have one that I've already got ready, and I can just cut and paste it straight in. When you bring in something like this in, I'll just select all of that, and I want to grab the center of it and put it onto the center line, so make sure that I'm in the right place. So I'll select it all, I'll go to move, and I'll just snap to the center of that circle and pop it onto that line, so I know that it is directly on that insertion point. And then I'm just using the arrow on my keyboard to slide it down so it's just above the other crosshair there, and I'll select tick and delete the image, otherwise it'll come through when you go insert it, and it'll be massive, so we'll get rid of that. The guidelines around, and we should be ready to go. Just to double check, make sure that I'm not got my scaling and everything sorted out. So it's about 10 millimeters across, so that's about where we need to be. So I'll save that and get ready to insert it into our drawing. So using the load into project, I won't do the load and close just yet in case I need to come back and tweak it. So I do load into project. I've got a file here called the Richard Street project, and here we are. So I'll just pop into this, I'll just hit modify to cancel that. Just pop into the site analysis, and I shall go to annotate symbol. So it's like the north arrow, we need to use the symbol to bring in our annotation symbols. The sun image is written here, and I'll pick to place it in on there. So that looks okay. As far as scale goes, I'm at 1 to 200. I'll just deactivate view, so I'm back out on the sheet, because I just want to measure what size this is on my finished sheet, which should come in around about 10 millimeters. And that's a 1 to 200 scale. I'll now activate that view by double clicking on it, change the scale to 1 to 100, and I just want to see, deactivate view, whether it still measures the same. And that's the key to getting this right. So it still measures around about that 10 millimeters, whereas our filled region, as you see there, it's now double the size. jump back in, we can do that test again, 1 to 50. You can see the filled region is getting bigger and bigger, and our annotation symbol is staying 10 millimeters regardless of our scale, which is what we're really trying to achieve by doing all of this. It's tester 1 to 500, and we've got the same scenario going on. We can move that around. So that's the first step. Okay, so we can delete the filled region out of there now. I've got my annotation symbol being my sun. I now like to get the direction arrows of the sun, where that's coming from. This will be what we'll be using as our azimuth to work out the angle from north, for which direction the sun's coming from. So I'm going to make the arrows separate from the sun, so that as I rotate this all around, the sun will still stay the same in its angle. Could still probably do it all as one, but I think I'll do it as a separate. So like last time, we go File, New Annotation Symbol, Generic Annotation, Open, Save As, and we'll call it Arrows. Delete the text, and we need to draw these in. So from Create, we'll do Align, and I'm going to start right on that crosshair, and I want these arrows to be, let's say, 5 millimeters long, regardless of the scale. And I'll do another one off to the side. I'll make it 3 millimeters away, come down 5 as well. And I'll do the arrow at 45 degrees, and I'll make it 1.5 millimeters. We don't get a lot of options when we're generating these. We've got generic annotations or invisible lines for our line styles. We can't have wide lines, thin lines, or medium. So what I might do is copy this line, and I'll just pop it in around about, that went 0.3, just to thicken it up a little bit. I'll select those two lines and mirror them to the other side using the mirror pick axis to that side. I'll then select and copy across from that line to that line, and I'll select that arrow and mirror it to the other side. So we've got our 3 arrows pointing down, as indicating the direction of the sun. Save and load into project. I won't save at this stage because I'm still working on this file, but generally we always save where we need to. So putting this in place on top of this sun, I just want to place it in the right place. Whoops. I'll activate that view first, that's what happened there. And from the Annotate tab, go to Symbol, arrows are there, and we can place them. And I'm looking to and let me do the center snap. So I'm just going to place them over to the side. Hit Modify, I'll select them and go Move. From the center point of that, this time I should get my snap overrides and go center of that circle, and then use the keyboard arrows to slide it down so that I can rotate them around as I need to later on for my azimuth. Give it a little test drive to make sure that it stays the same regardless of the scale. And that's what, again, look, what we're trying to achieve is to make sure that regardless of what scale we put these in at, they always stay the same size on our sheet. Set it back to 1 to 200. So now we've got our arrow, we've got a north arrow, and we've got our little sun, and we can start setting up our azimuth angles as required for the project. Okay, so to calculate what we need, first of all, I'll have a look back at my presentation just to see what I've asked for. For this project, and I want this tutorial to be applied to other projects as well, so I'll try to keep it fairly generic. But on our site analysis plan, I've asked for 5 different sun angles to be shown. Equinox at 9, 12 and 3, winter at 10 AM, because that's a good time when, you know, it's 10 AM before the sun has any warmth in it during winter time. And summer 4 PM, that's getting pretty, you know, that's that hot summer afternoon that we need to avoid. So as a design tool, we're looking at winter at 10 AM so we can welcome that sun into the home in our design, and summer 4 PM where we can prevent that sun from coming in. So a good little test case for us, and then we can work around these equinox. So I've gone off to a SUS design, sun angle, as comes out of Seattle, Washington, but I still find it's a really good, easy one to use, which is terrific. Put in the longitude and latitude. Now this is the longitude and latitude for Bendigo, and the equinox March 21, September 21. This is going to be the two equinoxes. They are a little bit different. There's a slight different tilt on the Earth at that time, but for our calculations it's just fine. Set the year. The elevation is the height above sea level in meters, and you can just Google that for wherever town you're after. The time I've put in is 9 AM. Now just note you have to put in a colon in the middle there or it won't work. You can't use a dot or a semicolon. It has to be a colon for that to work. AM, the time zone for Bendigo, or for the eastern states of Australia. That's our Greenwich Mean Time, the GMT, plus 10. We're going to use clock time and not accessing daylight savings time. And the 0 azimuth for southern hemisphere is towards the north. And then we can pick calculate. That gives us our information here. These are our two that we're looking for. The azimuth angle is 65 degrees from north and an altitude of 29 degrees. So let's indicate the azimuth first. So if I activate this view, and I might just detail line first just to get a little bit of an idea. So drawing a line from the bottom of that north arrow, if I come in from straight up and then start scrolling across, the temporary dimension is coming up from horizontal. Unfortunately, if it'd be handy if it came from the north arrow. These angles here okay, so how do we set up that 65 degree azimuth and indicator with this sun? What I'm going to do is rotate these. The 65 degrees is going to, let's indicate that first. If I draw a line from this north arrow, which is 0, straight out at random, and then put a dimension on it, an angular dimension from the north across to that line. That random line was 52, and we need it to be 65. That's what that azimuth angle is talking about. So bringing that back in again, 65.09 is the azimuth angle. Our 0 azimuth is to the north. So that's the angle at which the sun is coming from north at 9 o'clock in the morning on the 21st of March and the 21st of September, the equinox. So these arrows need to indicate that azimuth. So I'll select that arrows as our annotation category, and I'll go to rotate, and I'm going to rotate those arrows from, I'm going to place the place them in the middle of this sun. Snap overrides centers, and we need to rotate them around 65 degrees so that those angles are showing the same as this line here as our little test case. So that sun and arrow setup is now indicating 9 o'clock equinox. That's the azimuth angle that the sun's coming from, towards that direction. We can now add some text in there to indicate the altitude that that sun is rising, and we also need to give the the time of the year as well. Equinox 9 AM, and I'll put in there the altitude. ALT of 29 degrees, and I'll put in a 0 and then highlight that 0, and we can change it to a little 0 to indicate the degree symbol. You can also, I think it's Alt 0176, so I held down the Alt on the keyboard, and on the numlock I typed in 0176. That also gives you the little degree symbol there as well. So there we have an altitude and an azimuth of the equinox 9 AM sun angle. Let's do the next one. Next one I have on my list, and just bringing the presentation back around, equinox at 12 noon. So let's go. We'll change the time to 12, and it will be PM, which is post meridian, meridian being midday. So 12 PM, everything else stays the same time of year, same place, and we can do a calculation. So the azimuth angle is actually 12 degrees towards towards the east, and an altitude of 52 degrees. So it's not actually due north at the equinox, it's just 12 degrees off. So let's now put that data in. So annotate symbol, and we'll put in the sun image first, and I'll put in the arrows. Here we go, and it's given me a midpoint there, and again it won't let me do the snap. Probably need to turn on the center point snap, and I'll move from that end, right mouse click and snap overrides centers, place them central onto that, and then I'll use the arrow keys to slide them down. And the consistency in making things all very equal, I probably, instead of using the arrows, I should have a defined dimension that I'm moving those down. That's getting way too fussy. So 12 degrees from north is where this angle needs to come from, and again I'm just going to draw a line in at random, and dimension angular, and I'll set this line up. You don't need to do this stage, it's only a visual, so I can just double check. I've got a 12 degree sun angle that I need to put in. Pick on the arrows, rotate, place, right mouse click, snap overrides to centers, so I'm rotating it from the center of the circle. Pick anywhere at random and we're going to take it around 12 degrees. Copy that text across from here, and we have equinox 12 noon with an altitude of 52. I'll now proceed to create the other three different sun angles and get them all set out. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to be putting the prevailing winds on here too, the southwesterly and the northwesterly for the summertime. So there we have our climatic data drafting view with our information in there. We've used the annotation symbols to create all these so that the scale will stay true, and we can sort of work with it each time we need to do it. So how do we now save this so that we can use this file again another time? Select the drafting views, right mouse click and do save to new file. Create a new file. It's called climatic data as again, and you note here that it's a project file, it's an RVT file, so save that off into your preferred location so that it's there for next time. If you ever do need to bring it back into the next project, I'll just rename this one as climatic data old so we can bring the new one back in again. So from the insert from file, so we're going to be inserting a view from a file. Go insert view from files, locate the climatic data file, and it'll bring up an option as to what views are in that. You can have all sorts of different views sitting in there in your drafting views within that file, and you can pick on the ones that you want. So I'll pick OK, and let's put that in as a drafting view. That drafting view can now we'll go to our site analysis plan, and you can see there I've already dragged it in there. So just by selecting, dragging the climatic data drafting view in on top of our sheet, we can then position everything as we need to. I'll just get rid of that title boundary, so no title. At the moment our climatic data is all based on north being straight up the page, so as it is with this project, our north is not straight up the page. So I'm just going to activate that view by double picking on it. I'll do a detail line near my north arrow, making sure that I'm drawing that line straight up the page so that I can pop a dimension across to see what sort of angle we're working with. So this north arrow, assuming it's right, is sitting at 42 degrees. Deactivate view, return back to my drafting view, and we can't actually rotate that view, that don't have the option to rotate the whole thing into that 42 degrees. So we need to double pick activate, select everything within there and rotate 42 degrees. So now the arrows are all true and correct, facing the north in the same direction as that. The wind directions are correct. We now need to just pop into each one of these, rotate it, till it's all sitting square. We can then position these sun angles and the prevailing wind directions as needed. So select that one, go move, and we'll find a spot to place it. Just use the arrow keys on my keyboard, position the sun, and I like to position it so that we can have those arrows pointing directly towards our site. So it's summer at 4 PM at an altitude of 41 degrees. That's the direction that this sun is coming from. That's the hot sun we want to avoid. So as a drafting or as a design tool, we can have a look at trying not to have any windows that are facing in that direction. Equinox, 3 PM. See if I can find a spot on my site analysis to place it where it's not. The arrows are pointing at our subject site, and the text is as clear and not obstructed either. 12 noon. Can sit here. I'll shuffle that. Deactivate view. Double pick to activate the site. So I just want to shuffle this north arrow across a little bit. Deactivate view again so that that's clear. I'll just activate this and just making sure that we can read the text on each one. Winter, 10 AM. And the equinox. Making sure we're not obstructing anything else that's on our site analysis, our existing drawing. That sample north arrow can go, and the wind direction arrows can now be brought in, nominating the winter prevailing winds. And the summer prevailing wind. Again, as a design tool, it's just giving us a little clue. If you're going to be designing a space that you can sit and enjoy without the prevailing winds knocking you about too much, then we can indicate that sort of information. Deactivate view, save the project, and away we go.